Hello, everyone, and welcome back to yet another edition of the GSMC Fantasy Sports Podcast, brought to you as always by the GSMC Sports Network. My name is Christopher Shepard. Thank you guys yet again for tuning in to today's show. We should have a good slate ahead of segments for you. We're going to be continuing both our prop bets kind of segments and also our college football player profile kind of segments. And this is going to be a very interesting mix. We have a mix of breakout stars, either from last year or from years before, journeymen, established veterans, and then we have two more AFC East teams to round out that division, as we finished off yesterday with two other AFC East teams. So that will give you a hint of what's ahead. But before we get into any of that, I do want to remind you to like, follow, and subscribe to the show. Also, we do receive a ton of tips and donations, so if you do feel so inclined, please consider leaving them at the link gsmc.cloud. You can also leave any questions, comments, or concerns for the show there as well. But we also now are monetized, so since this is a pre-recorded show, you can leave kind of super thanks in the comments below, and I will address those as well in the next episode. So if you have anything that you like about the show and want to comment on, you can leave them in the super thanks chat in YouTube. Without further ado, let's jump right into our first segment of today's show, and let's start off with a college football player profile of someone who I think is going to have another fantastic season. True freshman last year at Arizona, a program that hasn't had a history of good, consistent success. But as soon as this young man came in, Arizona looked like a team that could contend potentially for a CFP spot this year. They are in the new look Big 12, so it's going to be very difficult for them to really kind of force themselves into the conversation in that conference as it's beginning to get more crowded. But I do believe that this young man is well equipped to carry this team to high heights while there. They also have a new coach, but again, I think this young man is still well equipped, and that young man is Mr. Noah Fifita. When we think of young quarterbacks in college football, and we think about the pressure cooker environment they're stepping into, we often forget that sometimes it's necessity to try and put someone younger in to kind of keep up with the pace of college football. That's what happened with Arizona last year. Jayden DeLaura did not necessarily work out. A lot of injury problems, so Noah Fifita truly had to step in and he shine in that spot. And I think that kind of unexpected factor really led him to kind of go under people's radars before transcending into the national spotlight. And right now, this season, he could be my dark horse Heisman contender. Someone that you should look out for in Heisman betting odds should you want a dark horse. And so, Noah Fifita, this year, it's kind of a different story, but it's kind of the same script. You don't necessarily flip everything in the script, because, well, you still have your wide receiver core, a guy who you really like in Tyrone McMillan, 1,000-yard receiver. But you are in a new conference, and you do have a new head coach. Gone is Jedd Fisch. In comes Brent Brennan, a good coach out of San Jose State University. Really kind of made that program his own, had some good seasons there. But it's going to be a test of the endurance of this team. Can Noah Fifita not only perform, but somehow manage to get enough wins so that A, Arizona is not a disappointment, and B, they're still in the national spotlight. And so that's going to be the big challenge for Noah Fifita. The small challenges he's already exceeding. I think he's already settled into college football. He now knows what it takes to compete, and so that I'm not concerned about. It's the bigger picture right now, because you're not in the Pac-12 anymore, where it is kind of top-heavy, but on any given Saturday, a team can come out of nowhere and really shock you. It's not as even. It's still even, but in terms of one-score games, that's where the football gods have to play their part as well. And so, while I like Noah Fifita and his profile in the Big 12, I do believe that he will have some stumbling blocks should some contests not go their way early. But let's talk about some of his stats, shall we? Because they were impressive for a true freshman. 2,869 yards and 25 touchdowns and 6 interceptions. Consider this, he didn't start right away. I believe he only started about 9 or 10 games in the entire season. And so, to get almost 3,000 yards as a true freshman, not playing the whole season, is truly miraculous. His best game also was against USC, a very big game. 32.3 fantasy points, 25 for 33 passing, 303 yards, 5 touchdowns, 1 INT. And since he doesn't necessarily qualify for as many games as, say, SEC quarterbacks because of the fact he played less, his worst fantasy start as a college football quarterback came against Oklahoma. 17.4 points, 24 for 38, 354 yards passing, 2 touchdowns, and 1 INT. And now, in the Big 12, I think that performance definitely matters, but it doesn't matter as much when there's so much parity in this league. I think that a lot of people are starting to parse out who might be the best in the Big 12. You've got your Kansas States, you've got your Utahs now, also making the move from the Pac-12 to Big 12. You've got now your Oklahoma States. These are teams that I believe are better suited for Big 12 play. I have to see if Cam Rising is healthy to really consider Utah that highly. But those 3 teams are perhaps the top 3. Outside of that, it's just a bunch of mid-tier teams just looking to knock off those 3. And out of all those teams, I believe that Arizona is the scariest because, A, Noah Fifita is still very young, and B, he has a lot of his core left. And if Brent Brennan can truly make that core happy, I believe that Noah Fifita will be well equipped to handle certain challenges. I don't have their schedule in front of me, but I do believe it's more manageable than most of those mid-tier teams. And I think that Arizona, when all is said and done, could be that 4th team that's in discussion, kind of sneaking up on everybody. That being said, the caveat here is that in the Big 12, because of so much parity, it becomes paramount that you don't lose attention span in close games. And in the Pac-12, Noah Fifita was in a lot of shootouts where he was on the wrong end, mainly because Arizona wasn't as talented, but also because they kind of got dragged into that mindset. Arizona doesn't necessarily have to always swing for the fences in terms of getting ahead. The Big 12 is always just about sticking with your opponent, and when their guard drops, you take advantage. We saw it last year. There were a lot of one-score games. In fact, Texas, my team, was very lucky in terms of one-score games. They really let their guard drop throughout the games, but at the end they were able to pull through because of luck. If Arizona can get lucky, and I'm not saying they will very often, but I do believe that at the end of the day, they're a team in the Big 12 that might sneak up on everybody. They could play potential spoiler. They could potentially even win the whole thing. I'm not sure, but I do believe that Arizona should be considered. Let's get back to Noah Fifita, what makes him so special. When we talk about a guy like, for example, Jalen Milroe, who's in a similar situation to Noah Fifita, the fact that he's a sophomore, new head coach, we get a lot more excited about him because of the profile he's in. Alabama has been in the national radar for many years because of the Nick Saban era. Arizona only came into the national eye last year because of Noah Fifita. So Noah Fifita, I feel like, should take advantage of Arizona still being a little bit disregarded to really cement his place in the Big 12 as one of the elite QBs in it. In terms of fantasy, I'm not necessarily worried about him. As long as he has McMillan with him, he and McMillan are probably the best QB wide receiver duo that you may never have heard of before if you haven't followed the Pac-12. But I will say this. When we think about young quarterbacks now coming in, Nico Yamilieva at Tennessee, Garrett Nussmeier at LSU, Miller Moss at USC, they all have one thing in common. They've only played in either one game or in small sample sizes. Even we could take Alex Orji up at Michigan. Noah Fifita is the only one of them outside of Jalen Milroe to have gotten that experience last year and is now in a transition to a new conference where I feel like a lot of his best traits will come to the forefront. And if you're sitting there in your fantasy college draft and you're weighing these two options, let's say your top option's gone, maybe even your second option's gone, and these two guys are the best available, let's say, Noah Fifita and Jalen Milroe. What's to stop you from grabbing Noah Fifita? I think he's going to be in a lot more close games. He's well equipped for shootouts because of the Pac-12's nature last year. And I just feel like the fact that Arizona hasn't been as good as Alabama for as long as Alabama, expectations aren't going to be as high. Notice how I did say that those three teams are probably going to be the best bet. I'm not including Arizona. I'm just saying that they could be right there. But at the end of the day, they haven't earned anything yet. And Noah Fifita should take that opportunity and say, I'm going to earn it by my play in a new conference. And that being said, when you're weighing these quarterbacks and these younger guys, it's better to take the more unknown than someone whose expectations are sky high, in my humble opinion. Because Noah Fifita has proved that he can hang tough. That'll just about do it for this segment. Coming up next, we'll be transitioning from player profiles to prop bets. We are going to finish up the AFC East, starting off with the Miami Dolphins right after the break.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. 'Cause everybody in